Assalamu alaikum ji. Good morning, everyone. Good day. My name is Mohsen Hafiz. I'm the IMI country representative for Pakistan office. And welcome everyone for this dialogue role of water, energy, food nexus for achieving food security in a changing climate for Pakistan. While we are waiting for a few other people, so I will be starting that we will start the meeting. And first, we are just showing that the video just about highlighting the food system. Thank you.
Food is more than just what we eat. The ways in which we produce, process, and consume food touches every aspect of life on this planet. It is the foundation of our cultures, our economies, and our relationship with the natural world, and has the power to bring us together as families, communities, and nations.
Families and children are on the brink of famine.
But today's food systems are fragile and unequal. When they fail, there are ripple effects around the world, and the pandemic has impacted the most vulnerable among us. But we know what we need to do to get back on track. We have an opportunity to build back stronger than ever. Transforming our food systems is possible and necessary, and we can set a course to make real change for the benefit of all people. By bringing together key players from around the world and giving voice to citizens in every country. Because a strong food system means
no matter your race, no matter your class, no matter where you live,
women and men have equal opportunities to produce and access nutritious food,
which promotes human health at every step
without degrading land and water resources.
Significa una agricultura familiar.
Provide us, the community, with stability.
All year round, every month, every day of the week.
Even during a pandemic.
We are all connected, and we all have a responsibility to act. We must be bold. We must think and act differently. Transforming our food systems is the most powerful action we can take to solve our biggest problems. Because together,
we can build a just and resilient world.
A just and resilient world
where no one is left behind.
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 Join us today.
I will be again, some people have recently just joined now. So again, for those people, my name is Mohsen Hafiz. I am the country representative for the International Water Management Institute Pakistan office, and I greet you all from warm Lahore. I will be the curator for this independent dialogue, piloting you through this session. And with me upfront, I'm happy to introduce Mr. Rana Wajid from IFPRI, who is the program lead, who will be the co-curator with me for today's session.
Assalamu alaikum, good morning.
On behalf of the organizing committee, we would like to thank you to, CGIR, many IMI colleagues, IFPRI colleagues, especially Rana Wajid Saab and Steve Davis, and PCRWR, Dr. Ashraf from PCRWR, STPI, Dr. Abu Sulari, and Pakistan Agriculture Research Council, Dr. Azim Khan, FAO, Dr. Rubina Wajid, Global Water Partnership, Dr. Parvez Abir and Hisar Foundation, Simi Kamal and Meher Sharmani. Thank you very much for your support. Okay, today the purpose and intended outcome of the discussion is we will be in this very interactive dialogue, we'll be discussing the ways in which food system can be localized and transformed in a water-constrained Pakistan in a manner that acknowledges the WEF Nexus linkage. The outcome of this this dialogue are publicly accessible on this dialogue gateway, and these outcomes contribute to preparing the summit action tracks, shaping the national regional pathways to sustainable food system, feeding into a regional and global series of dialogues, strengthening the community of practice on resilience. Today, that I would like to warmly welcome to the key guests, Professor Joachim van Braun, who is the chair of the scientific group for the Food System Summit 2021. Dr. Mark Smith, Director General of International Water Management Institute, Mr. Gufran Memon, Federal Secretary, Ministry of National Food Security and Research, and he's also serving as an IMI board member. And lastly, in the closing session, there will be Dr. Muhammad Azim Khan, who is the Chairman of Pakistan Agriculture Research Council. who will be also joining us. So some of these, thank you for your time from your busy schedule to join and participate in this interesting, in this important event. Your participation is a sign of your passion and commitment to water, land, and food system transformation in Pakistan. A few housekeeping announcements before we officially start that the event. This session will be recorded and made available after the session to everyone. Given the large attendance today, we are taking steps to ensure that a productive call uh, will happen. As we begin, everyone except the speaker will be muted. If you would like to ask a question or make a statement, please use the chat function, which is being monitored. This will let the moderator know that you have something you wish to say. We have organized some polls on the Mentimeter as well as. But before we go for the poll, I would like to ask everyone, please could you introduce yourself in a chat by typing your name, institutions, and then the location in this chat. And please also name yourself to name your affiliation of the institute. Thank you very much. Just we have two polls in the Mentimeter. It's very simple. If you have a phone or the computer, if you go on www.menti.com and then type in that the code 9272288, the first 9272288, again I will repeat it, www.menti.com 9272288, and then I will be sharing that result with you. If you go on www.menti.com and then you on your phone or on your computer, that's the internet, www.menti.com, and then use the code 9272288, then the result will start appearing here on the screen, which you are seeing it. Please note that the dialogue will be held under, okay, let me share that the bigger screen. And please, if you type in the chat one, even that the country and then the sector where do you work, that will give us the idea from which sector and we will be able to report back. Thank you very much for that one. Please note that the dialogue will be held under the Chatham House rules. So while participants are free to use the information received, neither the identity nor the affiliation of the speaker, not that of any participant may be revealed. We welcome you to share the key messages, outcomes with the participant and through social media channels and everyone. So these are the social media channels of the partners who have contributed in the session in designing this particularly this program, and very interactive program ranging from that the IWMI to all the partners who are from where the facilitators and then the reporters are participating in that one, and there are hashtags UNFSS, Summit Dialogues, Food System, Water Nexus. Without further delay, I would like to basically welcome Professor Van Braun to get the program started. Before I will be asking Professor Van Braun to start that one, I will be just, let me give a brief update about Professor Van Braun. He's a director for the Center for Development Research, which is called ZEF Bonn University, and in Germany. He's a professor for economics and technological change, and it's my pleasure that I studied a few subjects with him as a part of PhD, and also worked with him as a part of the postdoctoral fellow at the Center for Development Research. His research is on economic development, science and technology policy, poverty reduction, food and nutrition security, agriculture, resource economics, and trade. He serves as the chair of the scientific group for the Food System Summit 2021 of the United Nations Secretary General. Professor Van Braun is also the president of the Pontifical Academy of Science of the Vatican, member of various academies from 2002 to 2009. He was the Director General of the International Food Policy Research Institute based in Washington. Welcome, Professor Van Braun.
Thank you, Dr. Mohsin Hafiz. It's nice to see you again. Excellencies, colleagues, ladies and gentlemen, I'm pleased to make a few remarks at the beginning at this important workshop. I wish you all a happy Ramadan, and I commend the organizers for launching this dialogue on water, energy, and food nexus for achieving food security in a changing climate for Pakistan. I enjoyed all my visits to Pakistan and always came back with strong impressions of the opportunities of water and food and agriculture nexus in the country. Bringing these issues together in a nexus concept is critical for food systems innovation and for policy, because it enforces thinking about systems. And that's what the UN Food Systems Summit is about. It's a food systems summit. The summit seeks, as you know, to transform food systems to be healthier, more sustainable, and more equitable. I recommend that you consider the water system as important as the food system, and that's what you actually do, as I've seen from your program. Colleagues, we can be enthusiastic about the Food Systems Summit because three things are different this time around compared to earlier food summits. The summit focuses on the whole food system, so embracing food, nutrition, health, the natural resources, and the innovation. Secondly, it shall involve heads of state to address the big issues before us. And third, a deep involvement of science is this time part of the summit process. It was a bold decision by the UN leadership to appoint a scientific group for the summit, which I have the honor to chair. The Food Systems Summit aims to offer solutions to address failures of the current food system at global level and at national levels. Innovations are called for that. Innovations in policies, innovations in institutions, innovations in technology and in science. The Indus Basin irrigation system of Pakistan hosts a huge irrigation network, and more than 90% of all withdrawals of available freshwater resources of the system are being used for the agricultural sector, as you all know. The IBIS is vulnerable to changes due to climate change or due to transboundary conflicts at national and interprovincial levels. This is on your agenda. This complexity is known to the government of Pakistan and all actors. A complex system such as the Indus Basin irrigation system needs complex reforms to move forward, not some simple approaches like general water pricing or so. It needs also investment. Maybe, and that's one thought which I want to leave with you, maybe a green bond system should be considered at scale, where investments by private and public-private partnerships is labeled and means tested by criteria of water efficiency and climate resilience. Such bonds in other areas of the food system seem to pay off higher than other investments. Let me just mention a couple of milestones towards the summit. Setting targets for an ambitious agenda is what we currently do among the teams that prepare the advisory functions for the summit. Secondly, scientific days organized by the scientific group for the UN Food Systems Summit and hosted by FAO will be held July 8 and 9, a virtual platform where we want to have you all as participants. The action track teams and the scientific group cooperate on an evidence and science-based agenda proposal. Many dialogues such as yours are happening. It's important that the main conclusions of dialogues such as yours make it into the agenda. We in the scientific group will be happy to cooperate in communicating your findings into the summit process. I send you my best wishes for your dialogues and thank you for your attention.
Thank you, Professor Joachim von Braun. And really sharing some of the insight, and then based on your experience and about there is need of complete reform, and as well as due to complexity of the Indus Basin irrigation system, as well as also that there is putting the idea of the green bond, which is public and private partnership, and how that will be helpful for improving the water use efficiency. and then they also were developing some of the climate resilient solutions. Thank you very much. Thank you. Okay, so with this one, we also need, we need to look around at the process which Professor Von Braun also elaborated, that it's quite a universal process where there are many dialogues are happening and many stakeholders are involved and many voices to be represented and engaged. It is important to perhaps also emphasize the principle of UNFSS dialogue series, which we are committed to upholding today. First is act with urgency, and we recognize the utmost urgency of the sustained and meaningful action at all levels to reach the respective 2030 Sustainable Development Goals. In the light of this urgency, the dialogues are recognized as a contribution to the Food System Summit and to the elaboration of pathways to food system transformation, contributing to the 2030 Agenda for Sustainable Development. Second important is commit to the dialogue in the lead up to the summit. We commit to practicing that we preach personally and professionally to contribute to the vision, objective, and the final outcome of the Food System Summit. Third is important is be respectful. Respect for one another is a foundation for genuine dialogue. Participants in the dialogue are expected to listen to each other and open to the coexistence of divergent point of view. Recognize the complexity as the water system and along linking with the food system is quite complex. There are many actors are involved, there are many institutions are involved, and all these things makes it quite complicated, and especially for the Indus Basin, which is already facing that the water scarcity and many other complex issues there. So we need to be basically recognize the complexity and working around this, promoting the system approach, which is by involving multiple stakeholders to identify the actions across the system together with the potential synergies and trade-off. Number 5 is that they embrace multi-stakeholder inclusivity. Even for this today dialogue, we are talking with the 4 stakeholders from 4 actors from various water sector, energy sector, food sector, and then the climate sector. This dialogue is bringing the diversity of the stakeholders within the government, the private sector, as well as the civil society, the researchers, and all those are quite, everyone have their own innovative ideas. So we need to work across the food system from the production to the consumption. They are inclusive and strive to showcase as many voices as possible, capturing diverse cultural, professional, and gender-specific perspectives. The multiplicity of voices is captured in the dialogue feedback. Number 6 is important, complement the work of others. It's important that we complement that, not using with the silo mentality, but working and complementing each other, and the dialogue builds on and add on value to the existing policy process and initiative. They provide an opportunity to share promising innovations, connect stakeholders, and broaden partnership to transform food system for common good. Number 7, the one last is build trust. These dialogues are curated and facilitated in a way that which create a safe space and promotes trust, encouraging mutual respect. The conclusions emerging from the dialogue that are shared in this feedback and other are not attributed to the single individual. They are for the whole institute, without going to any individual institute or any of the individual representations. These dialogues looks at how we advance the integrated water-energy-food nexus approaches to achieve food system transformation. I would like now to invite Dr. Mark Smith, Director General of IWMI, to talk this one, and specifically the role of water in a food system transformation. Before I will ask Mark, I would like to give a quick introduction of Mark Smith. He's the Director General of IWMI. Previously, he served as a Deputy Director General Research for Development at IWMI, and he has more than 25 years of research and program management experience in water sources, agriculture, climate, and sustainability. He was formerly the Director of the Global Water Program at the International Union for Conservation of Nature. He has led and innovated multi-regional programs in Asia and Africa, Latin America, addressing the river basin management, transboundary cooperation, climate change adaptation, and nature-based solutions. He has a doctorate in ecology and source management from the University of Edinburgh and master in climatology from University of Gulf. Mark, to you.
Great, thank you so much, Mohsin, for that welcome. Professor Von Braun, distinguished panelists and participants, it's really a great pleasure to add my welcome to those others that have been made on behalf of my institute, the International Water Management Institute, to this UN Food System Summit Independent Dialogue On behalf of my colleagues, I want also to extend my warm thanks to our co-organizers for today's event, the CGIAR Research Program on Water, Land and Ecosystems, the International Food Policy Research Institute, the Ministry of National Food Security and Research, and its Secretary, Mr. Gufran Memon, the Pakistan Agricultural Research Council, and its Chairman, Dr. Mohammed Azim. This is the last of 4 of these independent dialogues that IWMI has been co-organizing on water and food systems in support of the UN Food Systems Summit process that Professor von Braun described to us. And it will also contribute, today's event will also contribute to the Global Food Systems Dialogue on Water that is coming up next week on April 27th under the leadership of UN Water. Before I move on, I want to also acknowledge that Professor von Braun, you've been with us in person for each of these 4 events, and we are really grateful for your support and your partnership in the staging of these dialogues, recognizing that you have a lot of demands on your time. And so we do really appreciate the recognition that you've provided of the importance of water to food systems. So what then comes to mind when we think of water in food systems? I bet that for many of us, the default assumption is that water in food systems translates to irrigation and agricultural water management. My view is, as I've worked on this more and more over recent months, is that food systems demands a systems approach from water as well. And the interesting thing is that when you do this, when you bring a systems lens to water in food systems, the major water challenges that the world faces and that this country faces, that Pakistan faces, fall into alignment with food systems. And I think this tells us that by taking action on changing water systems, we can make very important contributions to transforming food systems. And that therefore, the insights that you will be providing during the dialogue today and that have been gained over the course of this series of water and food systems dialogues will make critical contributions to the larger food system summit process and also to the grand challenge that exists of transforming food systems. So to understand how water systems and food systems align in the way I've been alluding to, consider first then the definition that's being used in the preparation of this year's Food Systems Summit. That definition says that food systems bring together the resources, the inputs, production, transport, processing, and manufacturing, retailing, and consumption of food, as well as the impacts of all of those things on the environment, on health, and society. So with that in mind, to understand the role that water plays in food systems, we should also be considering water resources and their supply to the food systems, water used in production of food, and water needed for consumption of food, which leads us to a very simple framework that we can use then to align our thinking about how water management links to food systems and the contributions that water management can therefore make to food systems change. That framework has those 3 simple components, and then also a special 4th component that I'll come to. So I just want to go through each of those in turn. So the first is water supply to the food system. This is the ecosystems and the infrastructure that provide the source of water. It's the management of water storage in reservoirs, aquifers, and nature. It's how we allocate water among economic and social uses while ensuring that water supply to ecosystems, for example, continues and sustains the ecosystem services upon which the whole system relies. And also, as we're going to come back to and dive into in depth in today's dialogue, it's also how we manage competition for water amongst the different sectors in the water-energy-food nexus and the inevitable trade-offs that occur there. The second component in this simple framework is water use in food production. So here is water for crop production, for aquatic foods, for livestock production. Here is the challenge of closing the yield gap for rain-fed agriculture to reduce the vulnerabilities that farmers face because of water shortages. And of course, here is irrigation, and the complex challenge of raising water productivity in irrigated agriculture and sustainably expanding irrigation to reduce the growing water scarcity and exposure to drought because of changing patterns of water demand, as well as because of climate change. The third component in the framework is water for food consumption. And here we must think about safe water for safe food, safe drinking water, and water for cooking. and reducing the exposure to contaminated water that leads to poor health, as well as to reduced nutritional benefits from the food that is consumed. And so it brings WASH, water supply and hygiene, water sanitation and hygiene, into alignment with food systems. The fourth component that I said I would also add is about managing water risks. And the critical point here is that alongside those many benefits that we just touched upon of water for the food system, water is powerful. We must bear in mind that water can break food systems, and that floods, droughts, and water pollution have the power, as I said, to break food systems and leave people without food security. And we know historically that has led to food emergencies. So as we think about water in food systems, we have to also take great care to prepare for and manage water risks in our food systems. How does this then help with the challenge of transforming food systems? Let's start in thinking about that by being future positive. What is the food system that we want? And how does water feature in that food system? And how can we use water to help drive the changes that are needed? Surely in the food system that people want, there is a sustainable supply of water that is fairly shared, including with nature. In that food system that people want, the benefits from water used on farms is maximized in terms of productivity, profitability, and nutrition. There are safe supplies of water so that people's health and nutrition are not burdened by waterborne disease and pollution. And the food system is resilient to water risks and to the dynamically changing risks as a result of climate change. So what then, before we finish, what then of Pakistan? Pakistan is a water scarce country where yearly water availability is less than 1,000 cubic meters per person. The government of Pakistan considers water as a strategic resource because it is linked to food security and thus to the security of Pakistan, and so to the need to create more jobs, produce more food, more energy. About 18% of the population of Pakistan is without access to sufficient food, leading to malnutrition, especially for women and children, a situation that the current COVID-19 pandemic has aggravated. And in pursuing that challenge of food, nutrition, security in Pakistan, more than 90% of the available water is used for irrigated agriculture, and around 60% of crop water consumption is met through groundwater supplies, with around 1.5 million tube wells in use across the country. And to operate those tube wells, huge amounts of energy are required, which also causes greenhouse gas emissions. So given this nexus of water, energy, and food, it's clear that creating the food system that people want in Pakistan will depend in part on how water is managed in the food system together with its energy burden. So looking forward, it's also clear that in Pakistan, solutions for sustainable food production are going to need to accommodate needs across sectors and likely trade-offs because of water. For Pakistan then, finding ways to manage the water-energy-food nexus is going to be key in ensuring a sustainable supply of water to the food system. And alongside that, in agriculture, there are a critical set of needs for innovation, for equality and access to land and water and finance and technologies, and for increasing the heat and drought tolerance of crops, increasing their nutrient value, and improving water productivity, starting from the farm right up to the scale of the Indus Basin. So changes in how water is used for food production will also be a key component of meeting food and water challenges. And in general, also, a food system that supports good health and nutrition will need reliable supplies of safe water that's free of pollution. And so as we go forward, recognition is going to need to grow that universal access to safe water and sanitation is a vital part of the food system and for water for food consumption. Finally then, Pakistan is a region that is highly vulnerable to the impacts of climate change. It's listed as the 5th most climate vulnerable country in the world, which is negatively affecting water, agriculture, energy, health, environment, and other sectors. So managing water risks in the food system is going to be of the highest priority in the future food system of Pakistan. So to close then, as we look then at water's role across the food system, there is a growing urgency for action. But what actions will have the greatest impact? What should we be doing first? Acting with urgency will require clarity and a shared understanding across stakeholders of what is at stake, what practices, technologies, and policies should be prioritized, what financing is needed and where. Transitioning from competition among sectors to cooperation, including across the water-energy-food nexus, will be a vital part of the story of food system transformation in Pakistan. Our aim is for the dialogue today to open and further advance discussion of how water and its links into the Nexus can become part of the journey to food system transformation in Pakistan. Debate is a critical part of getting this right, and therefore I welcome you again to what I hope will be an enjoyable, a constructive, and a productive set of debates today, and I wish all participants a successful event. Thank you, and back to you, Mohsen.
Thanks, Mark. Indeed, operationalizing WEF-Nexus approaches to achieve water, land, and food system transformation is going beyond the interconnected sector, but looking at how we achieve that the shared vision of water and food security in Pakistan. That's highly important. And then you have elaborated the 4 framework, which are very easy, and basically that is connecting to the different issues which are faced in Pakistan. Thank you very much. Okay, so before I will be inviting Mr. Ghufran Memon Sahab, who is the Secretary, Ministry of National Food Security and such, I would like to give a brief biodata of that. The Ghufran Sahab. Ghufran Sahab has been working with the Pakistan Civil Service and serving the government of Pakistan more than 33 years. Presently, he is the Federal Secretary, Ministry of National Food Security and such, and he is also serving as the IWMI board member. Prior to this appointment, he has earlier served as the Secretary, Interprovincial Coordination Division and Additional Secretary, Cabinet Division. And through my interaction with him, he really knows all the issues, the complex issues of water, as well as on the food security and what are the interprovincial, the disputes on the water and all those sort of things. He has really good grips on those issues. He has a master's degree in accounts and finance from Cardiff University. And he has been serving in the federal government with various ministries and as well as in various government departments in provincial government of Sindh. And he also served as a commercial consular, Pakistan Embassy in Indonesia, and Consulate General of Pakistan at Hong Kong. Welcome, Ghufran Memon Sahab, to you.
Thank you so much, Mohsen. Professor Von Braun, the chair of UNFSS Scientific Forum, Dr. Mark, distinguished ladies and gentlemen. It's a great pleasure to welcome you on behalf of the Ministry of National Food Security and Research to this UN Food System Summit Independent Dialogue on role of Water-Energy-Food Nexus for achieving food security in changing climate for Pakistan, organized by International Water Management Institute, IWMI, Pakistan. I've been told that there are 110 participants who have registered for this interesting dialogue. I'm aware that this is the last of 4 such independent dialogues that IWMI is co-organizing on water food systems in support of the UN Food Systems Summit that will contribute to the Global Food Systems Dialogue, which is coming up 27th of April, led by UN Water. I welcome IWMI and partners to discuss Water-Energy-Food Nexus approaches to achieve food systems transformation in Pakistan. Insights emerging from this national multi-stakeholder forum will be presented to the UN Food System Summit, which is scheduled for September 21. The transformation of food systems is among the most powerful ways to make progress towards all 17 Sustainable Development Goals. The expected key outcomes of this dialogue would be to share the views of all stakeholders across the Pakistan on sustainable food systems and the importance of this water, energy, and food nexus in the changing climate. The dialogue will focus on reaching a common understanding of these drivers and finding local solutions to major challenges facing food and water system transformation, along with attending issues of water scarcity and water security or a range of other factors. Distinguished participants, many research studies highlighted that demand for water, energy, and food is going to increase manifold in the coming decades due to increasing pressure of population growth, socioeconomic development in different sectors, demand for nutritious diet, climate variability, and rapid urbanization in Pakistan. However, Pakistan is already facing acute shortage of water, energy, and food to meet the existing demands of the population. We are more than 200 million people. According to the World Resource Institute, the country is among the leading 5 countries around the globe that face extreme high water scarcity and low access to safe drinking water and sanitation. This was even Mark, while giving the details of Pakistan, he mentioned about these things. According to the Pakistan Council of Research in Water Resources, Pakistan may run dry if the prevalent situation of water resources planning and management persists. To address the emerging water challenges, the government of Pakistan has started an agriculture emergency program to improve water conservation practice at farm scale across all Pakistan. Ladies and gentlemen, we have also had one Prime Minister's initiative on agriculture transformation plan, which also is focusing mainly on water and its related issues. Despite having tremendous potential in hydropowers, Pakistan is confronted with an intense energy crisis. The energy crisis started during 2005 as a result of growing demand and domestic and industrial demands. In addition to the agricultural uses, combined with the poor efficiency of the generation system, this problem persisted for more than 5 years. To address the energy crisis, the government of Pakistan has already started building up 2 large dams with a completion date of 2027. Distinguished participants, food security in Pakistan has deteriorated significantly since last 18 years, with around 18% of the population in Pakistan without access to sufficient food, leading to malnutrition, especially for women and kids. Pakistan is also not sufficient in most of its dairy food consumption items. For example, pulses, which we import from other countries. To tackle the malnutrition crisis, the Council of Common Interest approved a project worth ₹350 billion aimed at addressing malnutrition and stunted growth among children for the next 5 years. Pakistan, which has historically been wheat producing, and we have never been in import of wheat. This time we have gone almost 4 million metric ton import of wheat. For the next year, again, we are going for almost 3 million metric ton import. That's a gap between the consumption and the availability. The food situation in Pakistan may aggravate due to pandemic like COVID-19. Pakistan, being an agricultural country, generates almost 19% of the GDP and employs more than 40% of its workforce from the agriculture sector. Around 2/3 of the population of Pakistan living in rural areas is somehow dependent on agriculture for their survival. The sector is also the biggest consumer of freshwater resources, where more than 90% of the total freshwater withdrawals are for agriculture. Water is thus the backbone of the entire agri-food supply chain, but energy also plays a significant role in this food supply chain. Some of the estimates show that around 35% of the total energy consumed globally is diverted for food production and the supply chain. For example, energy is not only required for harvesting and sowing, for the transport from field to market and distribution systems and networks, but also to pump water from lifts from canals and treats if it's wastewater. The groundwater is playing a key role in Pakistan's irrigated agriculture. Almost 60% of the crop water consumption is met through groundwater supplies. For this purpose, around 1.5 million tube wells are being operated across the country. To operate these tube wells, huge energy is required, which is also causing greenhouse gas emissions. We are trying to manage it through solar systems, but so far we have not been successful in it. Distinguished participants, Pakistan has developed different policies and frameworks around water, energy, and food harvest. However, there's a lack of coherence among these frameworks and policies for the implementation on the ground. The water, energy, and food are intimately linked, and the systematic approach is required to deal with these resources in Pakistan. The systematic approach will generate scientific evidence leading to provide a sustainable framework to develop climate resilient water energy nexus solution at multiple scales: farm, irrigation system, basin, country, and the region. In the Indus Basin we are talking about. Therefore, it's a need time to go for this nexus approach as started in 2011 Bonn conference. I believe that this nexus approach will bring cross-sector coordination instead of sectoral specific optima to avoid negative trade-offs among the different sectors. The water food energy nexus is surely central to sustainable development and critical domains. Policy interventions can be made in any of the food, water, or energy sectors, while it is evident historically that decision making has been largely sector specific and independent in Pakistan. Rethinking food security and sustainable agriculture are crucial to describe and address the complex and interrelated nature of our natural resource systems, on which we depend on achieve different social, economic, and environmental goals for future development in Pakistan. In the end, I would like to thank everyone for making this dialogue happen. I appreciate the initiatives of IWMI organizing this event in collaboration with UN. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Francois, for highlighting that the complex challenges which Pakistan is facing in terms of water, energy, and food security, and how that's linking with the survival, the sustainable development, the future prosperity for Pakistan. And at the same time, also highlighting that some of the government initiatives, whether for building the new dams, or for that dealing with the malnutrition, or also for dealing with the low water use efficiency in agriculture sector, those are the right steps. Thank you very much. And IWMI and then the Allied Institute will be happy to continue working, and then how we could bring the systematic approach and helping to implement the different policies and working as a catalyst to make sure that the implementation on the ground will happen. We appreciate your support, which you have provided all the time. Thank you very much. So now I will be handing over to Rana Wajid Saab. Rana Wajid Saab, over to you.
Thank you, Mohsen, and we'll now move to poll question number 3, and I'll suggest please go to www.menti.com and type the following code, which is the same 9272288, and give your vote. The question is, what do you think are themes that require more discussion or that need to be prioritized in the breakout session? Please give your feedback, and Mohsen will sort of highlight the feedback based on your input.
Vaisab, can you repeat again?
It is www.menti.com and type the following code, which is 9272288. And the question is, what do you think are themes that require more discussion or that need to be prioritized in the breakout session?
Wajid Saab, Assalamu alaikum. This is Rubina here. The website is still stuck. It still says the question on the
Okay, Raza, may I request Razali to sort of address those,
I think there's an issue with the Menti. Dr. Moshin, we might have to do it after the breakout groups, I think.
Let's then move forward, and we'll now move into 8 breakout group discussions or breakout sessions. You have been pre-allocated into a group based on one of the 2 options that you selected during registration. The 8 breakout sessions include the following topics and key questions, and I call these breakout groups. Please, the facilitators may briefly enable their cameras so that the people can face to the names. The first breakout session is on sustainable and renewable energy for food production. The key question is, how can we sustainably produce more food in the region using low greenhouse gas energy sources? The facilitators are Nazim Ali from USAID and Naveen Arshad from LUMS. The second breakout session is on climate change impacts on water and food security. The key question is, how can we sustainably enhance food security without compromising water security in the context of climate change? It will be facilitated by David Potter from FCDO and Rachel McDonald from IWMI. The third breakout session group is on policy coherence, implementation, and institutional coordination in water, food, energy, and climate change that operationalize the Water-Energy-Food Nexus. The key question is, what practical steps can or should be taken to ensure policy coherence and institutional coordination to improve water, energy, and food security in the region. It will be facilitated by Pervez Amir from GWP and myself. The breakout session 4 will focus on enhancing performance of water system across multiple sectors: agriculture, domestic industry, and environment demands. The key question is, how do we enhance resilience of water system to meet the competing demands of multi-sectors: agriculture, domestic, industry, and environment? The breakout session will be facilitated by Muhammad Ashraf from PCRWR and Hamad Naki from WWF. The breakout session 5 will focus on advancing technical water energy food models, tools, and frameworks for decision-making at multiple scales. The key question is, how can WEF Nexus models tools facilitate new understanding of interdependencies and trade-offs in the WEF Nexus, as well as foster data sharing and enhanced decision-making in the region. The session will be facilitated by Stephen and Steve Davis. Breakout session 6 is on enhancing resilience and productivity of irrigated agriculture through WEF Nexus. The key question is, how do we build more resilient food and livelihood systems while protecting critical water resource, biodiversity, and other ecosystem services while satisfying growing water demands? The group will be facilitated by Rubina Wahad from FAO and Munawar Kazmi from ACIAR. Group breakout session 7 is on community strategies to operationalize equitable WEF Nexus approaches. The key question is, how can we promote equity and inclusion in WEF Nexus governance to create opportunities for transformation towards more just and sustainable food, water, and energy system? The session will be facilitated by Luna Bharti from IWMI and Meher Nosherwani from SR Foundation. The last group, number 8, will be on socio-economic synergies and benefits of WEF Nexus. The key question is, what steps need to be taken to assess the benefits and trade-off across sectors, especially from a socio-economic point of view: employment, health, migration, equity, GDP, etc. It will be facilitated by Abid Soleri from SDPI and Sayed Khair from Butham's University. The breakout session will last for around 65 minutes. The facilitators will either make use of interactive tools or the normal group discussion approach with the idea of brainstorming collectively and engaging everyone on what key actions can and should take place in the immediate, short-term, future, a 3 years time frame, and who could be the key partners and what could possibly be the determinants of success. The facilitators will nominate someone in their groups to provide the feedback in the plenary, which will be around 3 minutes for each group. The note takers, please remember to manually record your session, which will help you in populating the template that has already been provided by the organizers. In a short while, you'll be redirected to your breakout group. If you encounter any difficulties, please come back to this plenary room and type in the chat the name of the breakout room you'd like to go, and Razali will manually allocate you to that room. We'll now allow 2 to 3 minutes transition body break, which will also use to resolve any issues some of you may have in transitioning to your respective breakout room. Please remain in the plenary if you are not directed to a breakout session. So with that, I hand over to Rosa Ali for facilitating the participant to their respective breakout sessions.
We were not able to run that the Mentimeter due to some technical glitch. Now we resolved that issue, and I will be requesting everyone, if you go on your computer, and then basically it's a www.menti.com, and code is 80224810, and then that will give you that the first question is which country are you joining us from? I will be sharing that the Mentimeter, and we have tested during the break and it worked.
Dr. Mohsin, can you display the code of the Menti?
Yes.
Can you please write the code?
Okay, so it's 80224810. 80224810. Yes, so which sector do you work in? Please again that the code is 80224810, whether you are working in the government, you are working in the private, you are working for the research institute or the private sector or NGO or civil society. Okay, so next question is, what do you think are the themes that require more discussion or that need to be prioritized? Okay, I think that's already gone, but now just retrospectively, so that will help us for the future discussions when we'll plan for the future events. And again, that the code is 80224810. Okay, communication, institutional, linking sectors, practical, pilot projects and demos, climate smart agriculture, cross-cutting solutions, urbanization, food insecurity, web models, governance. Okay, very rich ideas. Climate smart agriculture, practical applications, nature-based solutions, managing transition, subsidies, role of environment, sustainable energy use. Okay, very informative. Equity, gender equity, and risk aversions, and GDP growth. Communication is again getting more prominent. Coordination, especially the institutes, urbanization, population growth. Thank you. I think we'll come back on this question after that one. But just thank you very much for that one. And now I will be requesting each group, basically, each group to provide a feedback. Please can you all note your comments or questions, as we will ask for your inputs in a poll after that one. Please write those questions or comment if you have it in the chat section. Now I will be asking a group one. Anyone from the group one, if you could, you will have 3 minutes for the feedback. Facilitator or the note takers, I will be asking Nazam Ali Saab or then the Naveed Saab or the facilitator. If you guys could, you have a floor for 3 minutes. Thank you.
In the renewable and sustainable energy for food production, we discussed a number of things. The most important is that there are financial challenges to the farmers, which probably prohibited them. Sometimes there are subsidies that are given to them, so we need to maybe disincentivize and incentivize towards developing more robust renewable or sustainable energy sources for them. We also have to look at the integrated energy plan of the country and see that how we can fit everything together so that different sectors are not going in different directions. We also have to look at some upcoming technologies like floating solar, agri-solar, and also look at transportation, food storage, preservation, because they're all very energy hungry areas and require renewable and sustainable energy. Then also we need to have ecological zoning of the country where we know that which crop needs to grow so that water requirements, based on water requirements and water availability. And I think the most important thing that people said is that we need to have education and awareness amongst the farmers. And more importantly, these demonstrations or pilot projects are needed so that people can see, and then when they see, they can have a blueprint of how they can do it themselves. And finally, I think we have the important thing is that the farmers need to understand what is the inputs that they're using in terms of energy or others. Unless they have those basic financial sense, it will be difficult for them to optimize it, how to maybe have better and efficient methods of energy utilization. So these are the few things. We discussed a number of things, but this is just a summary.
Navisa, is that that's all from your group, or anybody else want to add anything?
I'm not sure. I think we have covered. One thing that I would like to just mention is that probably some research funding will be needed to look at cross-cutting subjects. I mean, we talked a lot about cross-cutting things, but not a lot of research funding is available when we talk about that I'm going to work in 3 different or 4 different areas with a cross-cutting solution. And indigenous research is also needed. That's one thing that I think we'd like to mention. And other colleagues can add if they would like to.
Thank you, Navisa. Just, just summarizing some of the things which you have mentioned. You have rightly mentioned that there is some kind of pilot projects needed, and the research sector need to have some kind of funding grant, the mechanism which could help in setting up the pilot project, working with the farmers and guiding them, raising the awareness, and how that could be done based on the agro-ecological zone. Rubina just in the comment mentioned that FAO has recently done the work on the agro-ecological zoning for Punjab and Sindh. Maybe just linking up with that one, what you have said, and how we're looking around the whole food system from the supply to the chain and all the process, all the distribution and everything, and how these things could be integrated well. Because at the moment, everything is working, even the energy sector, it's not well integrated, but how that could be done. Thank you for raising the important issues. If they are not, then I will moving to the next group. Basically, that the group number 2, climate change and climate change impact on water and food security. David, Rachel, or anybody else who want to present the findings. Thank you.
Hi, Mohsin. It's David Potter here. I will just give you a quick summary. We talked about what the challenges are, what some of the key barriers are, and what can we do about it. On the challenges, we agreed climate change is affecting all elements of the food system. It's reducing agricultural output in the summer and therefore has an economic impact as well. And we felt it was primarily a rural phenomenon. Some of the challenges are increasing temperature, increasing salinity, shifting rainfall patterns, the overall availability of water reducing in some areas and changing in others, and the water requirements of crops increasing potentially because of higher temperatures. And finally, the impact of climate catastrophes, droughts and floods, for example. We talked about 3 key barriers. The first was about how water is priced, and particularly about the challenge of getting farmers to see water as a priced input rather than something they have a natural right to access. The second thing we talked about was a challenge of divisions between water and food departments and thinking more generally, and how that might create barriers to the sharing of data. And the third was about what the challenges might be to scaling up some of the responses like climate smart agriculture. Why is that scaling up process difficult to do? We talked about what we can do. A key issue that came out was training, particularly how do we train farmers to understand what the problems and the changes that come from climate change are and what to do about them. We talked about the importance of auditing water, so its use, where it gets used and by whom, accurately and with accurate data. We talked about the importance of sharing data. I've kind of alluded to that already. And also how to deliver on existing laws and regulations in this sector. We also talked about the need to transform the agricultural system and invest in water-saving technologies, to share water in different ways between sectors in the future, bearing in mind that 90% of water currently goes to the agriculture sector. The importance of climate-smart agriculture and giving all farmers access to agricultural support technologies. And finally, about the importance on the consumption side of people shifting their patterns or considering different patterns of consumption, which obviously will impact on the agricultural system. I think that's a brief summary. Hopefully I've covered all the bases. Thanks, Mohsin.
Thanks, David. Again, highlighting that some of the things are common, again, that when we are talking about and climate change is definitely impacting the Pakistan. And then you have highlighted that some of the key challenges, and if you'll say the biggest challenge is the data availability and data sharing mechanism, which is from one institute to the other institute. And also the second important challenge is about the water. How the water is priced, the way not as a free commodity, but how the water is valued, and then value is comparing to all the other sector. And if you want to go for the transformation of the water from agriculture sector diverting to the other sector, so we need to think about, and that's where the importance is, what are the mechanisms which we could provide to the farmers so that they could go for the climate smart agriculture. And again, those are some of the complex challenge which we don't have the answer, but that the funding mechanism, and as well as also looking around the existing laws and policy. There are many existing laws and policy. Even if we're looking around that the climate policy of government of Pakistan, if we implement the climate policy in the true spirit, that will resolve many of the problem. And on the top of that one, the institutional I mean that the lack of the coordination or the miscoordination is making the things much more complicated. Thank you, David. So I will be requesting now that the session, the group session 3, Parvez Amir Sahab and Rana Wajid Sahab.
I think we had a very fruitful discussion, sometimes heated. The three parts which were, what are the three things which we can do over the next 3 years? The SDG framework is only up till 2030. So one thing which came out very clearly was that ask federal and provincial government states where agriculture stands in priority and what it wants out of it. I think we all felt that there is lack of clarity. Where do you want to take agriculture? Where do you want to take food systems? I mean, from a relatively stable food system, we have now moved into sugar crisis, wheat crisis, atta crisis, you name it, and that crisis is out there with inflation. So both these governments, they need to come out with very clear statements. They need to set their direction. Political interference and political economy, main impediment and needs resolved immediately. One of our colleagues, participant, he made this very strong statement that you can talk whatever you want to talk. In the end, most of the decisions are being swayed by the political economy. There is too much interference, there is too much push and pull. So I think this is another area which needs to be sort of brought out. And fast track coordination and financial resources. We can do a lot of talking, we can make all the statements, but it's very important to fast track the coordination mechanism, which is very complex. Somebody said that there are 14 departments which are taking care of water alone. How do you coordinate within just those 14 departments? So that was an important point. We had some divergence of views also. We need to look at how our land, which is urban land, is now rapidly being, agricultural land is rapidly being converted into housing societies. And this, I think this is an important point which was raised. The need for ecological balance, the need to focus exclusively on agroecological zoning. You don't have one prescription which hits everything. You have to prescribe according to the different zones. And on the indicators, I think we are saying that look at, for agriculture, look at productivity indicators. There is a lot of statements, lot of divergence in that. Conduct surveys very regularly. And finally, take Google-based monitoring systems and put them into place, this remote sensing and other things. Right now, if you look at one of the just Google Maps, We can look at whether there is development taking place, what is happening in that area. Let's have a science-based response to policy. Just political base is not going to get us anywhere. It has to be science-based, and it has to use the tools. People are going to Mars. They're using helicopters in Mars. We need to get Pakistan back online in terms of the technology sphere. Thank you.
Thanks, Parvez. I mean, you have highlighted a lot of, that the issues and then the right issues, basically about where we want to take that, the agriculture sector. So what exactly our direction, as you have rightly pointed out, that we were stable in terms of food security, but over the last 5-6 years, we are going towards all the issues which you have mentioned about food insecurity. And then how we'll move that, the coordination between the institute, when let's say that there are 14 sectors who are working into those one. And then also on how the coordination could be improved, how those could be implemented on the ground. And obviously that will be implemented if you want to move out from the political economy based issue, or where the decisions are based on the politics. We need to move on the science-based decision, which are the evidence-based information, which you can get it with the some on-ground data, some of the remote sensing, blending of the data, and that could really give us the pinpoint, and then saying it, what are the interventions we could make it. Ashfaq Saab mentioned also the comment there, particularly that the issue is about that in Multan around 0.5, that some large area has been, mango tree has been cut. How that's happening? Again, there is a lot of political debate and all sort of things. Some are saying, yes, the mango trees have been harvested. Some are saying not really. But we could easily check out with the remote sensing and all this technology there, easily exactly pinpointing where is that area. And if you just make the decision based on the agro-ecological zone, not blindly following that the irrigated land need to be converted toward the agricultural land. So that's where the important, the science-based thing will be coming. Thank you very much. Just moving toward the next group is enhancing performance of water system across multiple sectors, agriculture, domestic industry and environment. Dr. Ashraf Saab.
Thank you, Dr. Mohsen. Under this, thematic question, we developed sub questions. Number one, how to develop a common database as a mean for coordination and to achieve the resilience, and how to associate value to fresh water for different sectors, and how to use the non-conventional water sources to fill the gap between supply and demand. One of the most important focus was on the nexus approaches, and our colleague was of the point of view that we should start implementing integrated water resources management approach rather than just simply discussing it over the time. And we need to have good governance and policy implementations based by some science-based evidence, as has been highlighted by Dr. Parvez Amir. Opening water system to multiple stakeholders, inviting new ideas, because at this moment, the water sector is confined to some of the institutions, and particularly we need to open it to the private sector as well. Major challenges in policy and planning to optimize the future investment is one of the key issues that we need to tackle. As far as the need for that knowledge database is concerned, we need to have a detailed water account, advanced data generation techniques. We need to focus on sectoral database before moving on to a single database. For example, we must have data for agriculture, for domestic sector, industrial sector, environmental sector. Then we can put it at a larger, at one at national scale under one umbrella. A similar it has been suggested for the provinces to have their own database, because after 18th Amendment, the water management and use of water resources lies with the provincial governments. They must have their strong database, and over there we must have a database at the national level. That will help the policymaker and planner to plan for the future program and projects. And definitely, the existing system can be managed with some uncertainties, because availability of data has always been an issue, even in the developed countries. So we can manage the system with some uncertainties, and with some kind of insufficient data, the system has been managed. So we need to give value to water. Unless we don't give value to water, simply pricing is not enough. So more investment on sector, particularly drinking water, because it is one of the most impacted, though it uses less than around 2% of the water of the total that coming into the system, but it has a huge impact on human and human health. So similarly, pricing and enforcing the pricing, financial sustainability of the irrigation system, such as ecotourism, prioritizing water use allocation according to the willingness of the users, associating monetary value to the system. It is very important. Unless we give monetary value, how much basically we are getting out of the water. As one of our colleagues mentioned that we in agriculture sector, we utilize more than 90% of water, but it contributes only 20% to the GDP. We have to, in fact, increase monetary value to the water we are using. Similarly, freshwater sources are finite and they are limited, and over the time they are depleting. So as the population is increasing and the water for demand for other sectors are increasing, so we have to fill the gap, and this gap can only be filled by number one, efficiently utilizing the existing water sources and exploring the new water sources, such as non-conventional water sources like wastewater is a bigger source. On one hand, it is a resource. On the other hand, if we don't manage it, it creates a nuisance. It pollutes the freshwater resources. So we need to use and recycle the wastewater using the polluter principle. And then we need to focus on, biosaline agriculture, saline, agriculture, saline reuse of water, rainwater. In the lower Indus Plain, about 10 million acre feet of drainage effluent is available. This again, on one hand, it is a nuisance. On the other hand, it is a resource if we properly manage it. So the use of the unconventional water sources. Now, throughout the world in Pakistan, technologies has been developed to use the unconventional water sources. There is a need to transform that knowledge into action. By using the appropriate policies. So these are, Dr. Mohsen, some of the points which our team discussed during the group discussions. Over to you, Mohsen.
Thank you, Dr. Saab, very much. So just a couple of things, you have highlighted. You have rightly pointed out that instead of thinking about developing a huge database for all the sectors, let's first look around each of the sector. So we have the what information we have it, where is the water consumed, and also then that will be helping towards the integrated water management concept that could be applied at a pilot scale, what could be done at the scale where we are implementing some of the acts or some of the policies there. And important is not considering that the value of water just for monitoring purpose, for that the money-based one, but also what are the societal needs for the ecology, for the domestic one, and how these will be feeding on the world one. So the science-based evidence is really important there. So data is quite critical. If you don't have the data, we can't make, but we can't rely on that one. We will have 100% all the data available, and then we'll make the decision. But whatever the information we have available, based on that one, we'll start utilizing the information. And then there is a huge unconventional, the water sources are available, which we could have a huge potential and we could use it. At the moment, it's have a detrimental impact because the wastewater is injecting into the fresh water. But taking the example of only the downstream Sindh, where there is around 10 million acre foot that the water is available, that could be also potential for the saline aquaculture and many other ones, changing the livelihood and many other alternative ways which we could improve that the poverty of the people and change the livelihood of the people. Thank you very much. Now I will be handing over to Rana Wajid Saab. Rana Wajid Saab, to you to take it from here, from group 5 to 8. Thank you.
Okay. Thank you, Mohsen Saab. May I now invite group 5 to present the summary of discussion on advancing technical water, energy, and food models. Stephen or Steve, whosoever wants to present.
Our group was relatively small, but that was also positive because we got up, but we don't have time pressure, and we discussed the things in detail. So we divided our questions into 3 blocks so that we can fill the template which is provided to us. The first block was about the icebreaker session. In that session, we discussed that how the WEF models can be an efficient way to use water, food, water, energy, and food in an integrated way. So then we discussed that WEF models are still an academic exercise. We need to find the ways so that we can use WEF Nexus in a practical way. This practical example is still limited, but maybe we need to focus more on that. Then we discuss about the awareness of the WEF models, which is not very well. People don't know much about the WEF Nexus models. Initially, there were discussion, or we can say the first generation of models was based on the disciplinary sort of work, but next generation is more working on the system approach. So in the system approach, because water, energy, food are integrated, so we need to have a system approach to address the issues with the WEF model. Then there was a discussion that if WEF models are good exercise, but how to present this model to the stakeholders. So stakeholders understand what is the use of the WEF modeling approach. The second block of questions was about the limitation using the model results. We discussed that firstly, there is a limitation that stakeholder has a limited knowledge about the models. And then there is another limitation that the models, because the modeling approach, WEF Nexus modeling approach is quite new, and there is a lot of development going on in the developed world about developing the WEF Nexus models. But still it is a process, it is under process. So the capacities of the model itself is a question. Then we need to have a data to run these models, especially in developing world. There is no enough data to run the model. So there was a discussion also that how to get rid of the limited data. In presence of limited data, how these models can run. Then there was a issue of capacity. There is no capacity, especially in the institutions, because it is an integrated approach, and our academic institutions are not doing a lot of interdisciplinary research, and WEF Nexus approach requires to have the interdisciplinary research or integrated way to do the research. There is not only a limitation at academic level, but also in research institutions there is a limitation to do the modeling, to do the WEF Nexus modeling in an integrated way. Further, at a legislation level or policy level, ministries are mostly working in silos. There is a less coordination among the integration among the policies between the different institutions. To implement or to get the real fruit of this WEF Nexus model, there should be integration among different ministries. That can be the one limitation when applying the Nexus approaches. Then the third block of questions was about the actions what we can take in the future to implement the WEF Nexus modeling approach. The first action was that we maybe need to start the dialogue, to start the discussions among different stakeholders, because when you are talking to a group of hydrologists, they understand that language, but in that group, if you start talking about the economic or other, it is difficult to understand for them. So you need to have more discussions, more awareness, more capacity building of the people, so that of the professionals, so this integrated way of thinking can develop. Then there is also silo thinking. We need to break that silo thinking and need to go for the system approaches and to get out of this silo thinking and to work together in an integrated way. Then there was an action point about the solar. Solar can be a good starting point because there are a lot of greenhouse gas emissions. 60% of the irrigation is through the groundwater, and groundwater requires energy. We discussed that, and we also discussed that can create a little bit issue of sustainability of the aquifers, because farmers can pump this free water a lot. So there was a discussion that when we are using the solar, we have to consider the depletion of the aquifers. And again, there need to have the integrated way of thinking, where different disciplines can work together in a transdisciplinary way, to have a solution which is sustainable for the people. So that's all about our session. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Osman Sab. I think you have resonated almost all the important points. We need to have a system approach to deal with this water, energy, and food nexus, and work out on the WEF nexus model. But important thing is the availability of data, as well as building the capacity. It is also important to have interactive dialogue amongst all stakeholders to bring them at a common platform as well as up the curve. And with that, the solar energy can be an important source, but at the same time, there is an issue of sustainability and environmental protection. So I think these are the right advices and right messages, and we need to work on that and create more awareness about using the integrated WEF Nexus model. So the next, I would request group number 6, which will present a summary of discussion on enhancing resilience and productivity of irrigated agriculture through the WEF Nexus. Rubina Wahaj or Dr. Munawar Kazmi, whosoever wants to present.
Thank you, Rana Sab. I would like to present on behalf of the group. We broke down the question into smaller segments to make it easy for us, and luckily we also have got less number of people in our group, which provided us a space for good chat and good discussion. So the first breakup question was that how to manage a trade-off between cheap energy sources, which my friend was mentioning about solar and others, with the over extraction of water to manage growing water demand. We believe, and our group has an understanding, that the holistic approach is needed. We shouldn't be using this cheap energy resources for groundwater extraction, but also for managing saline water available in the aquaculture or in the top layer, where we can use this energy resource. And also, in order to manage the mining, which has been just mentioned by the previous group, our group thinks that a restriction can be placed, or we can define, or the government can do some sort of zoning and identify areas for groundwater extraction. And in all this, community support is very much important, and we cannot dismiss their role. And in our projects, we have found that at some of the places, communities are learning that their groundwater resources are depleting. So rationalized use of pumping through solar system can be very effective and can be managed by in case of high efficiency irrigation system, or if you have on-farm water storage facilities, you can use that. One of the participants provided an example from India, where the groundwater solar pumping is only provided where the sufficient groundwater is available, and also farmers are encouraged to sell the electricity to the government, which is another system approach, and which helps the farmers to generate more resources and helps to generate electricity as well. The second part was that when on the one hand, we have water resources are shrinking while the food demand is increasing. How can we meet this challenge, and what can be done in the next 3 years to address this? The agreement of the group was that we need to improve productivity, but the water productivity should not be taken as in isolation. It should be taken as in association with the other agronomic and agriculture productivity factors, so that a system we can work through a holistic approach. And again, the another idea was to develop and come up with the technology packages with appropriate techniques, and we need to go for this climate smart irrigation technologies. And in that case, we need to prioritize science and technology, as our funding resources are also shrinking. So we need to be careful about that. One of the idea was, and a very good example was given by one of the participants, that in Pakistan, the rainwater harvesting is still a hidden resource, and nobody is considering, not only in the urban use, in agriculture use, or even for the recharge of the groundwater. One of the challenge we see, our group see, is reaching out to the smallholder farmers. There are around 8 million farmers in the Indus Basin region, so it's a challenge to reach to all of them. So we need a big focus on capacity building, so that the technologies which we come up can be adapted. Then what organizations are doing to meet these challenges? Dr. Ruby, our all colleagues shared, FAO has just launched a very big GCF funded project which are addressing many of the issues. Then ACIR and Australian government is also funding some projects on groundwater. And as my colleague Usman has mentioned, that reliable data is lacking. So one of our project is trying to help irrigation departments in Punjab and Sindh to have data loggers, so that the groundwater change data can be reliable and easily accessible for all. Some of the organizations are also looking for the water availability for Lahore and Karachi. And the last part was how we can measure the change. As Dr. Mohsin has mentioned about the use of remote sensing, again, the idea was same here, that we need to have a better monitoring system based on remote sensing and using satellite data. Then we also need to introduce monitoring tools for recording productivity enhancement. And that is not only for water productivity, but overall productivity in association with all the agriculture agronomic factors. Then there is always a say that 90% of water is being used in agriculture. But I think in reality, a lot of water is being now reallocated from agriculture to the urban use, and it's not being recorded. So our group proposes a regular water accounting on the periodic basis, including the allocation and water accounting within the agriculture sector, that what different subsectors of agriculture are getting water and how much they are using. So this is all from our group. I request, if I have missed anything, Rubina or my group can add into it. Thank you.
Thank you, Munawar Sahab. You have basically addressed all the issues. The main themes that came out are similar to the themes that came out from other groups as well. So taking a holistic approach, taking system approach, doing water balances using the hydrological cycles, how to be inclusive. That is one of the thing that came out, how to be inclusive, and how do we help or support farmers manage risk, especially in the transition phase. When you introduce new technologies, then there is a certain risk of to the farmers, and usually farmers are try to avoid risks. So how do different development partners, the state, the governments, and the private sector can help farmers support in managing those risks in the transition period, when they are leaving behind the traditional method of agriculture practices and moving and adopting the new technologies. And that's something very important that we need to think of as well. I think the rest you have covered it quite well. Thank you.
Thank you, Rubina and Kazmi Saab. I think the key messages coming from the group are that we need to have a holistic approach, and then maybe geofencing, the pumping out of groundwater through tubers or otherwise, and need to use the technology to monitor the water usage for cropping. Another message that has come out from the group is to increase the use of technology as well as water accounting for profit purposes and an integrated water management, both for surface water and groundwater. Some of the provinces are moving in that direction, particularly Punjab. And Sindh is in the process, and FAO is helping both the provinces to start the pilot for remote sensing of water usage in 8 districts of the two provinces. And I think they've raised the right issues and resonated the key messages. So I'll now invite group 7 to make the presentation of their discussion. It is on community strategies to operationalize equitable WEF Nexus approaches. So it's over to Luna Bharti or Bahar Nosherwani, whosoever wants to present that.
Okay, thank you very much, Rana sir. So I will be presenting, and then Meher Noshirwani from Isar Foundation will also, we've divided up the questions. So as you already mentioned, we're actually group 8, and the main topic of our discussion was how we can promote equity and inclusion in WEF Nexus management and governance. So equity and inclusion. So before I report on the items we discussed, I'd like to point out that our group was very small. There were basically first 2 participants and then 1 participant joined. So a very small group and all women. And so we were just discussing among ourselves that it sort of reflects the priority that is given to equity and gender equity, right? That it's a very not represented even or prioritized even in large meetings such as this, international meetings. Okay, so I will report on the first question which we discussed, which is what are the major barriers? And we had a very, very rich discussion, although our group was small and we actually even ran out of time. We could have discussed further for another hour, I'm sure. But the main barriers that were mentioned is, women are not involved in the decision making. And this is at all levels. It begins at the household and, village council, department, political, etc. So women's representation, as well as their role in decision making, is very small still at all levels. We discussed technologies. A lot of the new innovations and innovative technologies will marginalize communities and women. The access to new innovations is very limited, and it's not to just technology, but information in general as well. So access. Then another thing that was mentioned is at policy level, whether it's national policy or provincial policy, they're not inclusive enough. So when the policies get translated into implementation, then equity isn't already ingrained in the whole operationalization plans. So that was another issue. And another point that came up is the technologies that are designed and available are not friendly, are not women friendly. For example, when you're operating these canal valves, for instance, it might be too heavy or difficult and need more, anyway, so for women to manage these, although what came up again is in reality, although women are not in decision-making roles, the actual implementation roles, women play a major role. And that's also at, household level, canal, farm level. Although, I mean, when when policies are made for farmers, usually the picture they have is a male farmer, but in practice it might be women or a group of women who are operating these farm systems, irrigated farms. Another point is, okay, so when trying to make these technologies more women friendly, maybe the private sector could be included. Yeah, that's, sometimes innovation comes from all, all channels and pathways, and the private sector might be more successful. Government and private sector projects a lot of times just benefit large farmers. So small farmers and women are left out of these projects and new technologies. We had a discussion on elite capture, which is also a barrier for equity. And then a point was raised that even international organizations that are now working to include marginal groups in implementation, the programs are not effective enough. Yeah, and then sometimes equity. There's only lip service to equity, but even the own structure is not equitable enough, and that's a little bit critique. And control of resources, again, that relates control of resources, decision making. It's still in the men's domain, and the entitlement is still with men. Which comes, of course, with power for which then introduces this unequal power relations because of this entitlement. So these were some of the major barriers that were discussed. And so I'd like to now hand over to Meher, who will then report on some of the other questions we discussed. Thank you.
Thank you, Luna. Thank you. I'll just take the barriers a little further because you've covered most of them, but just to add a few more. We did discuss the fact that women are not considered farmers. Whenever you talk about women within agricultural production, we usually just look at men and fail to recognize that women are part of the value chains, part of the production process, and they are often not included in the discussions because it's generally assumed that all farmers are always male and men. There is a limited recognition within the Water-Energy-Food Nexus. Women do a lot of the groundwork, but men are given the credit. And that's another barrier to participation, to inclusion. And although they are visible in the urban systems as well, for example, buying of land, most of that also is mainly seen as a male domain, although women do participate in it. So therefore, the inclusion discussion focused around the fact that marginalized groups, vulnerable people, women in particular, are not included in our systems, their roles are not understood, and they're not really given the access, control, and space to be able to participate. And the participation has to be from the ground level all the way up to political and representation in policy. To find increased participation in policy level, that was spoken about a number of times, because if women are not included in that process, then the policies ignore their roles, their needs, their priorities, and it's important to have them participating and speaking out and having their voices included at all levels. So that's some of the things that we talked about. Gender stereotypes is another issue that emerged, which are so deeply ingrained in our society, and this is not just in Pakistan. We had speakers from other South Asian countries as well, and the situation is similar in those countries, where it said that the gender stereotypes need to be changed, they need to be revisited, and the mindset of people needs to be addressed. Apart from the barriers, we also talked about some successes or actions, or if there were any areas where we had seen successes which could be scaled up to a larger state. So that was also discussed. We discussed that in Nepal, women have in the last 2 or 3 decades recently been involved in community groups in the forest sector. And because of their election and engagement in at community level, their leadership roles, their training, and their capacity building has increased. So there has been a change. These kind of successes need to be noted and they need to be scaled up and recognized. It was possible because they had political representation at the community level. Therefore, women were able to come into the political process. Similarly, from Punjab in the rice sector, examples were given where there are small successes, but they have not been able to sustain them. And they need to sustain them and to scale them up, you need resources, and we need to recognize them as well. These successes particularly were mentioned in the value chains where women are part of the production process. They have been included in that, they've been recognized, and they've been brought into the marketing sector. So they have been involved in marketing as well. But there is no mechanism to sustain these enterprises. So we need to have more focus on sustainability of successes where women have been included in these sectors. In the water sector, again, there are successful models where women have been included, where women are working at the community level in drip irrigation. HIES was also mentioned. However, again, it's the lack of implementation, the lack of acknowledging them in that sector, and then being able to give them, providing them with the resources that are required for them to sustain these kind of activities. So those were some of the successes so we do need to recognize that all the women are neglected and on the margins still. There are areas where successes have taken place. So we need to include those. Another issue that emerged is that when we measure equity, it is usually, again, measured in terms of performances of certain systems, and it's designed in a way that you don't really take into consideration the kind of role and responsibilities that women and gender responsibilities in the whole measurement of equity. So again, it is lopsided. It sort of looks at male participation, and women are generally excluded. So how does one measure equity and success? That is another issue that we talked about. And finally, the priorities and perspectives within gender are different. Men and women's roles are different in the household, in the community, and therefore their priorities and their perspectives are different. We need to speak to them. We need to ask them. We need to ask women what they require, what their needs are, and then include those perspectives in our planning process, right from community level all the way up to policy level. So these are the issues that emerge from our group discussion. If Luna or anyone else, Luna, if you'd like to add any more, I think I've covered most of them, but if you'd like to, but that's what came out for us. Thank you.
Thanks, Meher. I have nothing more to add. I think we covered all the points that were discussed. And as I mentioned before, we had a very rich discussion and we actually ran out of time. So, yeah.
Thank you.
Thank you, Luna and Mahar. I think these are very good messages, and there's a need to recognize the enhanced and increasing role of women in agriculture, water management, as well as livestock. And while formulating the policy, there's a need for more inclusiveness, including the women in both policy making as well as implementation, particularly in value chain development, food processing, and other areas of that nexus. And you rightly said that when we make the policies more inclusive, it will automatically take care of the equity issue, which we are missing a lot. We also need to scale up the success stories in different countries of the region and different parts of Pakistan to scale up on sustainable basis. And as we move forward on the WAC nexus and taking holistic approach, there's a need to include the women at all levels in decision-making process as well as implementation. So thank you. With that, I invite the last group to present its discussion presentation or summary, which is on socio-economic synergies and benefits of Water-Nexus. Abid Sulari Saab or Professor Sayed Khair Saab, whoever wants to present.
Sir, there is a slight correction that Azim and Azim and Dr. Abbas Sulari Saab were the facilitator. Thank you.
Okay. Okay. Thank you. Sorry.
So, Vaisa, I'll be presenting on behalf of the Group 8.
Sure.
Okay, so in our group, we first discussed some of the socio-economic challenges and their connection with the Water-Energy-Food Nexus. And in the challenges, we first discussed the population growth, which has been one of the key issues in Pakistan, and how that could be tackled. And connected with that, we discussed migration that is happening towards the cities, largest cities, which is leading to urbanization. And this is also very much connected to the issues which are related to water, energy, and food security. Then we also discussed the challenge of decline in the share of GDP from the agriculture sector. What are the reasons, what are the causes, and what can be done in the future if we really want to improve the agriculture contribution towards the GDP of Pakistan. And similarly, we also discussed some of the unemployment issues and equity for that matter. So some of the action points that emerged from the discussions that we have had in our group included that, there is only 0.18% of spending that is going towards the agriculture sector. And yet, we expect that the agriculture sector contribution in the GDP should increase. So there was, suggestion from the group that the contribution in the R&D, particularly in the agriculture, should increase from the government. It has to substantially increase. We are not spending enough directly to the farmer community to expect to have better yields and improve in the agriculture contribution. Similarly, there was a suggestion to improve the value-added agriculture. That is an area where we have not done much as a country. And there is an apprehension also that, if we are not taking benefit of the produce that we have, someone else would take that benefit. So government need to seriously consider promoting the value-added agriculture. Then we talked about the energy insecurity, and there was discussion particularly from the context of Balochistan, where there has been huge subsidies that have been given on the electricity, and the people coming from Balochistan in our group, they mentioned that there is a huge potential to promote solar-based irrigation in Balochistan. Not only it would help the people to utilize vast amount of land that they have to generate surplus electricity, and if that may be provided to the grid, obviously would provide us extra additional resource income, but also would help in dealing with the crisis of these subsidies, which is unsustainable at all. There was also, with regard to water security, discussion on the storages, and ranging from the on-farm storage towards the larger reservoirs that we have now started to construct in Pakistan. So suggestion particularly from PARC was that, in order for the farmers to really yield benefits of the available supply of water or energy resource, they need to promote on-farm water storages, which would help in the longer run to deal with some of these insecurities we have in the energy and the water sector. Then also in the action points we discussed that there are often issues which are at a particular community level, which lead to migration or force people to move towards the larger cities. And one of the major issues is we are not very good in the watershed level management. So watershed management, if we focus on the hotspots or areas, again, linking to the other group discussions where they have talked about the benefit of using remote sensing for that matter, or the scientific tools to identify those areas, zones where you can, target the population, and in terms of providing them with certain securities, which also include watershed level management. So they might not consider moving to those areas where they feel more, safer, or where they see more opportunities. So these are some of the action points that our group discussed with regard to these socio-economic challenges in this water, energy, food nexus. I think I have tried to cover all. If anything is missing, someone from our group can also contribute.
Okay, thank you, Azim Saab, for highlighting the right issues for creating more socioeconomic synergies. I think you're really right that Pakistan needs to enhance its public investment in R&D. We are probably one of the lowest in the region, which is 0.12% of our agriculture GDP investing on research and development. And we need to scale it up to at least 0.3 to 0.4% of our GDP, at GDP. Then you have rightly pointed out that we need to strengthen our extension system so that we can take that research to the farmer level to make them aware more about the new technologies, best international practices for farming, and then focus on improving our value addition in agriculture and developing value chain management and post-harvest management. Balochistan, yes, there has been a lot of debate for increased use of solar energy, but then we also need to sort of make our legal regime more effective and enforceable, and at the same time taking care of various risks that are involved, including mining of the aquifer in Balochistan because of very or declining water tables. Water security is an important issue, and you're right that we need to sort of, as one of the groups mentioned, for harvesting the rain, developing on-farm to large-scale storages in the country and for effective water management. So I think there has been a very rich and diverse discussion, and there's a very rich feedback given to the organizers. So thank you all the groups and presenters or facilitators for presenting the summaries. And with that, I hand it over back to Mohsen Saab.
Thank you, Rana Saab. Just, for excellent summarizing all the discussion. But based on, okay, I just want to go to the next one is, I know we are a bit, we are over on the time, but just there are two quick, again, that the mentimeter.com, which is what are the key take-home messages and key actions that you think you should be prioritized in the next 3 years. 7 people have already contributed. I would be again asking the people if you spend a 30-second on that one using the mentimeter.com and using the code 80224810, and just add some of the other things which you think which is not yet there, which we have not discussed yet, but then already the issues are right. Sustainable groundwater management, inclusion, more priority for equity, water supply side, better monitoring system, resilient farming system. Okay, so it's more water pricing resolve. Okay, sustainable agriculture, less talk, more work. Yes, that's correct. Policy implementation. Again, that the climate smart agriculture is coming. Resilient farming system is again appearing. Okay, thank you. And just awareness about the WEF, inclusion, equity, yes, expanding water market, holistic approach, water accounting, stakeholder engagement, and managing expectation. Yes, those are really the right point. The water balance, water supply side. Thank you. And equity is now becoming a bit more prominent that many people are highlighting that the equity is, which is one of the real constraint in terms of the WEF nexus or even overall that improving that the water, energy, food security issues. Okay, so just now move to the last question. Okay, how can we tell these actions are successful? Please, any indicator so that if you'll again convene that one, or let's say in the 3 years time, how we will assess that the actions are successful? Again, that the menti.com and use the code 80224810. Reduce poverty, yes, that's very valid. Some of the sector specific things, the actions. Okay, now we're saying increase productivity, self-sufficiency in food, analyze transparently, monitor, continue dialogue, self-sufficiency in food if they are sustainable, strong monitoring, and leadership, a yield per acre increase, participation of women translating into the Urdu, water availability, accountability, good, yield per acre increase, water use by agriculture, tail end productivity, which is very important in the context of the Indus Basin, that the tail end farmers are not getting the water, and remote sensing and ground truth data, maintenance of groundwater level. Thank you. Continue dialogue. Thank you, everyone. And just now we'll move back to the session, and I will be now requesting to Dr. Azim Saab, the Chairman Pakistan Agriculture Research Council, to have basically provide a concluding remarks and then the way forward. Before I will be requesting Dr. Azim, I just want to give a brief update about the Dr. Azim. He holds a PhD in Resource Economics from the University of Reading, UK, and presently heading the Pakistan Agriculture Research Council, Islamabad. He has worked in many prestigious positions, including the member of Food Security and Climate Change, Planning Commission, Ministry of Planning, Development and Farms, and as well as Director General of the National Agriculture Research Center, the federal organization which is carrying out research in all areas of agriculture, including food and fiber crops, horticulture, vegetable, livestock, poultry, fisheries, farm mechanization, natural sources, alternate energy, and the food processing, and as well as the water sector there. And previously, he remained also in the actively involved in the with the policymakers in the discussion in the international centers and development partners for planning R&D activities. He was also remained the dean or director of the Pakistan Institute of Advanced Studies in Agriculture. And he's also part of that the various that the state of the, I will say that the prestigious institute of the initiatives as the chief executive of Park Agrotech Company, Petco. He remained there for a few years, and he also served as a member of high panel of expert steering committee for the mandate of 2015 onward. Thank you very much, Dr. Azim Saab. Now floor is to you.
Thank you very much, Mohsin Saab and Wajid Rana Saab for holding this very important dialogue on this issue, on this nexus, water, energy, and food nexus. I just want to share background that I'm a focal person to prepare on 5 tracks, material, conduct dialogues, communication, and then develop a very comprehensive proposal for the food summit. And we, just to remind, the track that will be covered include access to nutritious food, then shift to sustainable consumption patterns. The third track is to move to natural and positive production system. And fourth one is advanced and equitable livelihood. And the fifth one is build resilience to vulnerable shocks and vulnerability shocks and instability. So I think today's dialogue was very comprehensive, I must acknowledge. And as it has been acknowledged in the beginning by the experts, international experts, who are heading these tracks, particularly on this build resilience and vulnerabilities, they very rightly mentioned that issue is very complex, and this was very clear from these even 8 thematic areas. Although we can understand that effort has been made to comprehensively cover this subject by dividing into 8 thematic areas, and then expert led these discussions. And I must acknowledge that a very comprehensive discussion has been, as a result of this dialogue, the outcomes that has been shared with us, and it will definitely benefit us in preparing what game-changing proposition, because that is what has been agreed at with all these 5-track heads or the experts at global level experts, that we will be identifying few game-changing propositions related to all these tracks. I think this 5th track, I just want to share that we 3 game-changing proposition related to this 5th track, that is build resilience to vulnerability, shocks, and stresses. We already identified those who are targeting identified vulnerable production systems for adaptation, sustainability, and resiliences, preservation and conservative use of natural resources available. That was another game-changing proposition that we are currently developing on it, developing concepts, developing backgrounds, what has been already done in terms of intervention, what are the outcomes of this intervention. And the third game-changing proposition, that was investment for innovative technologies. If I just look at, I must acknowledge that all you see the professionals who participated in the deliberations, they very comprehensively enlightened us through their recommendation that in relation to these 8 thematic areas, what are the challenging situation that we are facing, and then they have also suggested some solutions. So what will be our responsibility, the team that is working on this food summit, this comprehensive knowledge that has been shared today from these thematic areas. I will not repeat that, because very nicely and very comprehensively both Wajid Rana Sahab and Mohsen, he was summarizing when the report here from his group, then they shared their discussion, and they very nicely summarized from each thematic area. So all this knowledge is now available with us and available with the IWMI, with the IFRI, and with other partners. So this knowledge will be used to just incorporate these findings, these deliberations, and these important points in all 5 thematic areas, wherever it will be applicable. So I'm highly thankful again for listening, very candid opinions, analysis, evidences, solutions on all thematic areas, because even it will take time if I just repeat, just mention all these 8 areas. Although I took note on my own record notes, and I have seen that very nicely, the session was conducted very nicely. And then very important questions were asked at different stages. And then response from all the participants is also shared, and it is well documented with your team. So I hope that this whole, all these aspects will be shared with us. And finally, I recognize that water is a very pivotal production input. And then if we combine this water sector, water availability, and exploring new water resources, and then using these available scarce water resources efficiently with the use of right kind of energy mixes, cost-effective energy mixes, depending upon different production systems. And then we will be consciously in relation to our population increase, demand for food, national, international demand for food prices, food availability at global level because of COVID-19, under COVID-19 scenario. All these discussions will help us to clearly spell out from national perspective what would be the game-changing proposition, and those will be then we will discuss that at various levels. We are planning that all this knowledge, all these discussions will be incorporated to develop game-changing propositions for all 5 tracks. And this knowledge that has been shared today, that will be incorporated appropriately in all those tracks. And then we will be developing further evidences, further data, further analysis on impacts, what has already been done, and how far we were successful previously for all these tracks, and what are the gaps, and what are the new areas. I can see in all these eight groups, a lot has been identified where we can just add on the availability of these precious water resources, and then we can use them appropriately. Also institutional nexus, also policy nexus, all is now information is available with us. I think then we will invite in a national dialogue on all these 5 tracks, you will see reflection of today's discussion. And also when these dialogue will be planned maybe during next month at regional level, related to each track, then again we will get an opportunity to see how this whole knowledge base, this whole discussion dialogue was incorporated in those tracks, and then synthesized as a national presentation, or maybe as in relation to each track, and then having a dialogue with the regional partners, development partners, public sector partners, civil society organization, then having a consensus. Then this consensus will be shared at national, at regional level, and then this document will be finalized and shared finally before we will submit this whole knowledge base into this food system summit during this that is going to be held during this year. I'm finally thankful to Mohsen, to Wajid Pirzada, and all professionals, all my colleagues who really participated wholeheartedly and shared their knowledge base. And we, as a result of this sharing, this dialogue process, we are now having a very clear idea in relation to this water, the food and energy nexus. So from my side, thank you very much, and it will be very useful for proceeding further in relation to developing a holistic kind of information and knowledge, and developing recommendation to contribute from the national perspective, and then for their ultimate consideration at global level for implementation. So thank you from my side.
Thank you, Dr. Azim Saab, very much. I mean, just I want to highlight, I mean, few of the things as we discussed last night, that okay, where IMI as a knowledge institute, and then the IFPRI, which we want to do it, and how to contribute into the Pakistan society, into making sure that the country is a food secure and water secure and energy secure, and what are this evidence-based information we could bring into that the domain. What we are going to do it basically, as we will be happy to share that the finding of those ones. So in 10 days time that the final recommendation will be available, and we'll be submitting it as a part of UNFSS. So every participant who attended there, and that will be publicly available, and we'll be sending the link. We'll be also sharing the recording of that one, whoever is interested. So if people are interested to know what actually has discussed in a particular group, that's important. And from the science perspective, we would be happy to contribute in the action tracks, in that your regional meetings, in that the the national level dialogues, and wherever there is opportunity, we want to contribute, because we believe that it's not a one sectoral approach, but then how these things are linking together. Because Pakistan as a country, we need to think about integrated approach, and some of the people have highlighted some of the issues which we know from the last 5-6 years. Those issues are common. Data is one of the problem there. Involvement of that the communities is also there, and the gender issues are also there, and then the investment in search, and then also going a holistic system approach. There are policies, but how those policies will be implemented, and that's where that the partnership between the like-minded people who participated here, the development partners, the government sector, and all sorts, when they have really shared their knowledge, and IWMI as a and IFPRI as an institute, we acknowledge everyone for their contribution and for their support and everything. Just where we want to take this one, definitely we'll be contributing towards the national state level dialogue, but also on 27th, IWMI in a partnership with the UN Water, we are organizing a global dialogue, which is on the water as a game changer for food system. In that particular dialogue, I am facilitating one session which is on a bottom-up experiences, natural and regional, national and regional priorities for sustainable water and food system. Because IWMI has organized in partnership with IFPRI, we have organized 4 regional dialogues, or the national dialogue: Pakistan, Central Asia, and in Egypt, and then in South Africa region. So based on those findings, so that will be gone into there, so that the international policymakers who will be sitting there, so that we have active discussion. And at the same time, parallelly, you guys are working on a state level, and then basically saying it the action track, and see how we could join our forces to make sure that there is impact, and we raise the voices from Pakistan to that the level where there is a bit more sustainability of funds. The other mechanism is there, at least the people in the international one community thinking about that water system and food system are rightly connected. And yes, there is a need to effort a bit more. Just before I will be concluding, I just want to share one last slide, and then basically that will be here. We could not organize this dialogue without that the hard work of many facilitators, many core partners, many the co-partners. Obviously that the PCRWR, STPI, PRC, Food and Agriculture, Global Water Partnership, and HISAR Foundation have provided the facilitator. And we started discussion with them in in late January. But then many other people, the organization, the FCDO, David Potter, GIZ, Abad, and other teams, IC Mode, that the Arunji, and then the Abad, and then the other people contributed, and ACIR, Kazmi Saab, WWF, Masood Saab, and Hamad Saab, and also the LUMS, Naveed Saab, and Naman Saab. Many people have contributed to make sure that this is successful dialogue. Thank you very much. And one thing is, in 10 days' time, we'll be sharing that the findings of the report based on the UNFSS, the state dialogue. But our plan is a month time, that will be a giant discussion paper, which will be coming, and that will be sharing what are the key findings, because in the proper template, we'll be able to capture only 1 or 2 things. But IWMI, along with the other CGIA partner, will be looking forward together working with you. At the moment, we are working on one of the CGIR initiative, where we are looking around the Nexus initiative. And that's a potentially CGIR, the project we have selected in this basin is a part of that the initiative, which hopefully will start very soon. And that will create a knowledge base and the database, and many of the issues which highlighted that there is interdisciplinary research is needed, raising the awareness of the community level, involvement of the community and everything. And we will be contacting with the government agencies in the near future for having a bit more active involvement, and all the other partners at the Research Institute to make sure that once this project will start, that will be really effectively working. Thank you very much, and have a nice day. Apologies for the last time that again for 30-minute overrun, but I believe that when the discussion was very interactive, and thank you everyone.
Thank you, Mohsen. Thank you everyone.